video is, or this video I should say, is about the lore system of Vysta. So, talking about what the lore I came up with. We're not going to go into specifics, I'll give you like a general overview as I go through the pages of what I've written. That way it doesn't take like forever in a day, and hopefully I can keep on topic and not ramble too much for you guys. I do love this game very much, so I have a tendency to ramble and gush about it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, we'll start off. This is our starting page of the lore book that's written. It's kind of in an Excel format. That way, you can flip between the certain areas that I've written. So we'll start off with the map. So as you can see, kind of studied map making and world building from literature and geography professors to kind of get an idea how this needs to be done, and created a realistic huge continental island, kind of like almost like an Australia of sorts. Like it is an island but huge, from which all 6 races are to be found. So you have this area here, which is like the rainforest. You have a mountain range cutting off, so this area gets more water, where this area is more arid. You have marshes here in the north, a desert here in the south. You have the Delta Plains, which, scroll down here, led to like the Delta Plains area here, but you have nice plains and nice farmland, and then rainforests up here. So, okay. So moving on from there, let's talk about the world that this all takes place in, or what happened to this island. So as you can see, we have step 1 was the creation of the races. We had the goddess of creation. She created each race to have a purpose, to protect her creation of the world that she created. So the dwarves were hewn from the bones of the earth itself. They are charged with safeguarding the earth, the actual earth, like the ground, and underneath it, and ensuring the stability of the world's foundations. So next up, you have the elves, and these will have different names. I'm just using that terminology because in the beta that'll happen, and in the alpha that did happen, it's easier for everyone to understand if I use like the common terminology for them, but they will have different names in the game once the game goes to launch, to represent that this is a different world and they didn't end up naming themselves the same arbitrary thing. But right now, we'll go with the common terminology so you can get an idea too of what these races should look like. So elves, they're the spirits of the wind and the forest. And as you can see, there, would be able to see if I didn't have my face over there. Go scroll down a little bit. They are entrusted with protecting the balance above, i.e. the plant life and animals, and making sure that there's a balance between nature and the world around it. Gnomes are the brilliant and ever curious creatures that they are. They're gifted with the spark of ingenuity, and their job is to build, create, and inspire progress of the creator's creations, and creating goddess. Next up, you have humans. They're versatile and determined. We're granted the wisdom to solve problems, mend wounds between nations, and adapt in times of crisis, i.e. their charisma and caring. They are the healers, the doctors, so on and so forth. Next, you have the orcs. They're strong in body and indomitable in spirit, and they were born the sacred duty to revere and preserve. So they became the keepers of history and the guardians of ancient truths, and they're the watchers over time itself. Excuse me. So next up, we have fairies. And fairies are luminous beings of will and wisdom. They were given the divine charge to teach and guide. And they, because of that, choose to endure harshness to perfect their own selves so they can be in a position to teach that much better. So, in the start of all this, they're all in different areas of the world. Vysta is unknown. The continent of Vysta is unknown at this point in history. And they're flourishing. Magic is everywhere. It's used for everything, and it's just ubiquitous. It's like water or air. At which point, though, this leads to the first wave, the ancient explorers. So because of this, they start going out and seeing what else is out in the world. They find the other races. They, form alliances and work with one another. Because again, with magic being what it is, no one's really wanting for resources or anything. It's a time of utopia. So when they meet these other races, there's no hostility. There's just open arms and like, hey, cool, these guys are here. So everyone starts exploring the seas, the skies, whatever they can to kind of learn about this entire world that was created and they were put on. And it was at that time that they found this huge island continent of Vysta. And very similar to like when people started colonizing the Americas, it was because of the massive amount of space and resources. They needed crops, they needed things like gold, silver, precious metals, and they needed space to just live. And this provided all of it. So all the six nations started colonizing sections that suited them of this continental island known as Vysta, and leads to second wave here. That's the start of the trade era. And that is when people started like going, oh, let's start selling these and trading with one another. And very prosperous time because of all the massive resources on Vysta. So it was a time of growth and a time of exploration and trade, and was pretty good still for the people of this world. Let's see, and then we have the eclipse, and this is like the pivotal like moment in the story of this world that the CCG will be taking place in. In the eclipse, there was two suns and a moon, and there was a double solar eclipse where both suns are behind the moon, and there was just like this big, like kind of fateful moment when the eclipse was over. They noticed something was wrong, and that's that one of the twin moons. Twin suns had disappeared from the sky. Now there was only one sun in the sky, where there'd always been two. And that was foreboding, to say the least. Within days, if not months, of this event, they noticed that all the magic that had existed in the world was gone. It was vanishing, or gone just outright. And this was a huge problem because people were abundant in food because magic allowed them to grow wherever they wanted. They didn't have to worry about growing the scientific way with, finding arid soil that has the nutrients, blah, blah, blah. You could just literally cast spell and, oh, look, that field of corn is growing on top of a bed of rock. So this became a problem for food, for travel. Like until then, like all their technology, like boats and airships and everything, was built and designed to work with magic as the propellant, as the protectorant, and they didn't have any of that anymore. So all of a sudden society just kind of collapsed without the loss of magic. Of course, as it says, Vysta sundered, the disappearance of magic removed all contact of these six races with their governments, their mother territories. Now all of a sudden they're adrift and alone in the wild, as it were. And they got to figure out what to do. Of course, this biggest problem in this situation is how are we going to eat? Crops are withering away. Had a late night, sorry. And with these crops withering away, there's no one to, you know, grow our food. We're going to starve. Our whole race is going to starve. However, the humans who are living in the plains, in that rich Delta River territory, they still were able to grow the old fashioned way because they had great land. And so originally, these people were more than happy to spend their resources to try to wait out this problem and figure out a solution. So they would buy the food from Tendario, or and of course that leads to problems down the road because you can only have your money can only last for so long, and the food's still not like coming to you naturally. So that's kind of a big problem situation. So every nation's kind of poised at the edge of a knife against each other. Um, it was. Let me go back to the summary. There was one other point to bring up. At one point, coming out of the deserts of the Orc homeland, which was thought impossible for anyone other than an Orc to be able to survive and navigate the desert correctly without dying, a lone human comes walking out. No retinue. He was not a king. He didn't sit on a throne. He was just a humble monk. But his name was Tajima, and he had with him like a prophetic realization that he passed to anyone he met. He was not like, oh, you pay me $1, I'll teach you my secrets or anything. He freely gave this information and was a teacher, a prophet, and a messiah of sorts. And that was that he had seen the other side, the life beyond, like what happens after you die, the beyond life. And he called it, he said that there exists beyond this a place called Neos, where the spirits of the departed dwelled. And they taught him secrets of the life force and energy, because obviously if they're existing on the other side, they're not fully dead, and how can that be? And so he spoke of a thing he called Sin. That's SYN. And that is your soul's energy. You can actually use the energy of your soul to cast some levels of magic. But you had to be careful, because if you used up all your soul's energy in the casting of a magic, you would die and you would go to the great beyond. So to those that listened, he was able to teach them his ways, and many decided to start following and teaching as well. And that led to the creation of monasteries for the teaching of Tajima's wisdom. And it wasn't so much a religion as it was like more like Zen Buddhism, where it's like a practice, an understanding of the world, but not necessarily a religion in of itself, just a practical way of understanding how the world works. To protect themselves from all their enemies, the humans would envelop and understand and create, with some mild sabotage from the gnomes, steam power. And that allowed them to accelerate the protection of their vast plains, because they were able to use steam technology to create steam trains. And so they're kind of like at the start of an industrial revolution spark in their society, whereas many of the others still aren't. So we'll go into that a little more when we talk about the humans, but that was a major point in the historical chain too, was their invention of steam engine. So we've kind of talked about magic. This is part of the primer here, is just a little more in-depth study of like magic and how magic is used on a political, economic, scientific, and religious standpoint for the races. I need some caffeine hard, guys. Man, I don't know. I apologize. I didn't think I'd be this tired. Anyway, this is just a little more detailed information about the eclipse and how it like affected all the things from culture to economy, politics. Not that important either, but we'll talk about the races. That's the last thing I want to talk about for this video, so it doesn't take too long. So you have the humans. Like I said, they picked up in the plains. They have steam technology and vast farmlands. They are a meritocracy, and whoever is the most apt politically, mechanically, and or technologically is selected to be the leader, and then they rule from that time period forward. So they're called the Steam Minister. That's their greatest mind. And it's ruled from the academic department. The Respirian is what they call themselves. Academic department. And at the helm of the academic department sits the Grand Inventor, which is kind of like the Prime Minister of sorts. And they are, well, I wouldn't say Prime Minister. They're like the God, kind of like the Speaker of the House to a degree, and they reside over the technoelement, which is kind of like a parliamentary system, and then the Prime Minister is the Steam Minister. So that's kind of what their deal is. Humans are kind of like a steampunk Britain of sorts, and I do have some pictures. These are pictures of the nobles of the different races. So let's find. That is the current Steam Minister there. So that is the humans. The elves, they're nestled inside the rainforests. They don't live like elves with like these beautiful like massive cities like you see in like Lord of the Rings or whatnot. They're more tribal, like the Celtic Druids, the Scottish, and the Irish. So it's kind of like a Celtic Scottish thing going on. They're guerrilla fighters. They walk around in packs protecting the rainforest. If you go in there without their permission, they're not going to just harm you right away, but they're watching you very carefully, and if they perceive you're disrupting the balance of nature and the outside, then you will quickly find out how fierce they protect that balance. And just to pull them up, that is their leader there. So you can see very heavy Celtic influence. And citizenship is not a birthright in the elves nation. Every child, they're known as a sapling, is granted 8 years of blissful unrestricted freedom. But at the end of their 8th year, the pruning begins, and that is a trial of mind, body, and soul. They're cast into the wilderness and left to fend for themselves against the creatures in rainforest, against hunger and against fear. Some will emerge stronger, wiser, reborn as true Garretish citizens. Many will not emerge at all. To survive is to be worthy, to falter is to be forgotten. So, it's kind of Spartan-esque in that sense, where it's like we cast our children to the wild so they can prove themselves. But theirs is not just to create perfect bodies like the Spartans were. Theirs was because your job is to find balance in nature, and there's no better way to find balance than to be one with nature. So it's kind of like forcing you to kind of engage with nature in a way that gives you the divine creator's blessing. They are not ruled by any kings or courts of nobility. They're ruled by the tribunal, and that's a secretive council of druids who claim to commune with the very spirits of the rainforest. The tribunal is not chosen by blood nor by an election, but by the will of the forest. During the pruning, those children who display an unnatural connection to the elements and can hear the whispers of the trees are then pulled away and are taken by the druids to train in secret. And once they graduate, they become part of the tribunal council. That's a rare gift that they have. It's literally being able to commune with the actual plant life, the animal life, and the weather. It's a really interesting thing. They're kind of best known for their growing of like medicinal herbs and fauna and flora, because that's all their big thing. So it's kind of what they're known for. Next up is the dwarves. And we'll start with the picture because it'll help, I think, very much with understanding them. So dwarves, you need to think Soviet Russia, like during the Battle of Stalingrad and the USSR, meets dwarven culture. Both of these things aren't too far apart, I know. So, big surprise. But that is what's going on there. So they have muskets, cannons, and they can sell those to other nations, but they're pretty much the sole maker of that kind of technology. Gunpowder is their sole domain. They believe in holding up inside their mountain strongholds. Another big surprise for dwarves. But their culture. Individual ambition is meaningless if it does not serve the whole. So it's a collective culture. There is no individualism. From the youngest apprentice to the oldest grandmaster, you understand the focused strength yields unmatched results. So their group success far outweighs the desires of the individual, and each dwarf takes pride in their contribution to their homeland, whether it is the forge, the mines, or the battlefield. So they're ruled by the collective, and it's spelt kind of fun. A council where all working citizens have a vote, providing they contribute to society. So as long as you're either in the army, a guildsman, you're doing a job. As long as you're working and providing to the society, you have an equal vote. So as such, because you need to work, you're not focused on your individual work, but the work to the group. A dwarf's work day is 3 days a week, and then 1 day to the council is dedicated work directly to the council called the collective, and the remaining 3 days for personal time to hone your craft, so that the other 4 days, the 3-in-1, can be better served because you're at a stronger skill set. That is pretty much the dwarves. Just think staunch Soviet Russian dwarves with muskets and cannons in their mountain strongholds, and you pretty much got a good idea of them. Next up is the dwarves. Now, the dwarves are based off of feudal Japan, so they have a feudal Japanese culture, and they live on top of floating islands above the marshlands. So, again, we'll pull up them. That is our gnome right there, studying over the battle map. So, is a technocracy where government is dictated by the knowledge and invention. The great tinker is believed to be the same person he's always been. Think kind of like the emperor, where the Japanese believed he was a divine entity. This is actually the case for them. They believe that he keeps reincarnating into a new body. And then when the old Great Tinker dies, they go and look for his reincarnation when they believe they have found him using their mechanical devices to help prove that he is the reincarnation of the Great Tinkerer. He is placed into power and the cycle continues. So they believe they've been ruled by the greatest inventor of all time since they started. He just keeps coming back for them. So even though because of that, it's kind of hierarchical. The fun thing about them is their actual technology, not their culture. Though their culture is pretty cool. Once their whole thing was magical technology, creating magitech. But since the eclipse, they haven't been able to do that. But everyone's still kind of wondering how, regardless of that, their cities are still floating in the sky. So, here it is in their geography. Few understand how these islands remain suspended, but whispers persist of a darker truth. Some believe that the floating cities are powered not by mere machinery, but by something far more sinister, the trapped souls of those who perished in the eclipse. If the secret is real, then only the Great Tinkerer knows the truth, and they have no intention of sharing it. So they needed another fuel source. Magic wasn't there. However, souls are magical, so maybe they're harnessing the power of souls to keep their islands afloat in the sky. Don't know. Okay, the Briarthorn, which is the name for the fairy race. They live in the very harsh, think true Australia, where every animal and everything's trying to murder you all the time, like marshlands of Australia. And that's called Marsh. Their nation is called Marshroot. And the fairies ended up following because of their determination to be the best at everything, that intense desire for perfection, and their diminutive size and need to band together for strength in numbers. Their culture ended up kind of following a unique path and being like that of the great Roman Empire. So there they are. That is the Briarthorn, or the fairies. So, and they pretty much are mercenaries for hire and great teachers. Any nation would be happy to pay top dollar to get a Briarthorn fairy to come and teach them how to fight, because no one's a better fighter, no one's more harsh, no one's more skilled than the fairies of Briarthorn in combat. And so if you need the job done, hiring a squad of fairies to come and do it is like saying that's 100% win chance, almost. Like 99 at least. Nothing's 100, but you get the idea. So that's their shtick. And then finally, the great seekers of wisdom, the orcs, which I know doesn't seem normal, but I really like this concept of having orcs use that raw strength for the pursuit of knowledge and protecting it. So they're kind of like a Knights Templar, where they have this great library of Alexandria where all the world's knowledge that's ever been is stored in these books and these high vaulted ceilings of the great library that's hidden in the middle of the desert. No one but the orcs know where it is, because that way they can keep it safe and keep this knowledge safe, as was the directive of the goddess of creation. So they sit there. Their culture is just nomadic tribes that go around, because that way they can go around finding and looking for knowledge, and they trade some of the knowledge that they feel is okay to let out to others for other knowledge, or they pay for knowledge to learn things. And then the leaders of all these nomadic different tribes will make a pilgrimage once a year to their Mecca, to the holy library, and deposit their knowledge. And of course you have people that stay in there, the monastic order, that kind of stays there protecting the library and scribing it, and keeping everything up to date as well. The grand librarian is in charge of all that. So That's the orcs, and I've hit 30 minutes, so I'll stop it there. But I hope that gives you an idea about the world that I created and for Vista. And I look forward to hopefully getting this beta off the ground so you guys can experience and play in this world.